What's up, everybody? Welcome to the High Level Husband Podcast. I'm Tommy McAllister, joined again by Dianne. She didn't drop her name like I was hoping she was going to on that, guys. We'll work on that. But anyways, guys, we are going to talk about how sin has real life consequences, and also how do you want the pain to stop or do you want to be healed? Because so many people out there right now, babe, are just struggling with pain in their life, especially because this is a husband podcast, right? That's typically with, marriage issues, things like that. And it's just painful. Like, it's an emotional pain in so many ways. We've been there, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not fun. And they just want the pain to stop.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with getting the pain to stop is the only way to make that actually lasting happen is to be healed.
Right.
And so I'm going to touch on this statement right there first, guys, but then I'm going to also touch on sin has its real life consequences in it. And so I'm going to use a scenario, and it's a true scenario. There's a guy who recently just came into our coaching program, and he's just like, man, I'm at this spot where like my marriage is, man, I'm just losing hope in certain aspects that, it's ever going to be able to be saved and things like that. And I said, bro, let's take a peek at your life. I said, you drank almost nightly, and I wouldn't say alcoholic style. This was an alcoholic style. This was like a couple of beers or maybe a cocktail a night, and then on the weekend would tie one on, but it wasn't like getting hammered all day long type of thing. Super high functioning, successful guy, in like business wise successfully. And so those issues, struggles with porn and masturbation, so sin, right? And then, of course, all the other things that come along with that, anger and everything of it. And so that's real life sin. But why are we having to do those things? Nobody just watches porn or just gets drinks every night. I get an occasional drink, and I'm not condoning by that way by anyways, guys. I set the standard there. I don't believe in drinking. But with that being said, I understand to a certain extent an occasional drink.
Right.
But when you're drinking every night, there's a reason, and there's a reason, then there's a pain that you're trying to numb. And people say, oh, well, it's just been a stressful day. I'm trying to take the edge off. So when you say that, you're saying, A, God's not good enough to take the edge off. Your spouse is not good enough to take the edge off. Your mindset is not strong enough to take the edge off. Your kids are not good enough to take the edge off. And your life that you've built for yourself is not good enough to take the edge off. So I need something like porn or alcohol to do it.
Not to mention you have an edge of something that you're trying to take off for some reason. Why is that edge there?
Right. And the people, well, life's just stressful. No, life has moments that can kind of be that way, but really, like, then you're not really trusting God in those moments, that he's working all things together for good.
Right.
And so that shows that you have a weakness and that you need to grow that. And that's okay. I'm not saying like, dude, like tomorrow you can just turn that off. It's a process of sanctification for that to happen. And that's a whole nother topic on that. And so what we're talking about here is sin has its things. And so he's like, man, it's like, I don't know. It's like, since I've removed porn and masturbation from my life, since I removed drinking from my life, I feel like I'm just more emotional. And I'm like I'm literally had a breakdown the other day where I was just crying to my wife. And this is like a pretty strong guy in a lot of areas. I'm not saying you're not strong because you cry. And he's like, I'm doing that. And he's just like, man, I just don't know. I'm losing hope. And I said, bro, you just removed the things that were stopping the pain.
Now you're feeling the pain.
Now you're feeling the pain.
Right.
The purpose of pain is to tell us something is wrong and we're supposed to grow.
Right.
So now for the first time in years, you're actually having to realize, oh my God, I got to deal with this pain.
Right. There's something that needs to be fixed.
When you deal with it, you heal it. Right. And so you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh my God, this sucks. Now you're getting emotionally because it's coming out of you. Well, emotions coming out of you in like tears isn't a bad thing. It's like something that's like being released. Well, when you suppressed it for all those years, you were numbing it. It was still there. And it was just stacking up and festering, and it was growing this infestation inside of you. And now it's coming out.
Right.
So I said, bro, because of 3 weeks of you removing that sin from your life, don't think that you didn't have years of turmoil that you've caused from that sin in your marriage, in your life, in your self-doubt, in your beliefs, in your friendships, in the blessings that you've blocked. Just because you stop, that doesn't mean that the ramifications of it has stopped. You've created this storm that's spreading. Now you got to deal with it. Just because you bring mold into the house and it starts on a fruit, and just because you're not bringing any more into the house or whatever, it's still going to spread until you stop all that. You have to remove. There's a process of it, of doing all of that, right? And that's on fruit, but that's in the house, or that could be any other things, right? Maybe that wasn't the best analogy, but it's just the same process of that. And so the good part about it is that God wants to use pain for your good. And I'm pulling out a Bible verse here. And it's Psalms 119:67 and 71. Before I was afflicted, I went astray. So that's that guy masturbating, watching porn, drinking alcohol.
Right. Going astray.
But now I obey your word. It was good for me to be afflicted so I might learn your decrees. So God, what he's saying in there, the affliction is the thing that's drawing him to understand God. And that's the only thing that will ever bring lasting joy and peace and continuous growth. And so when you do that, the good thing about your struggle that you're going through in that sin is that that's what's causing that as well. So it's the good, but it's also the bad that it's causing. And so now you have all this turmoil. And so one, you have to just acknowledge that I've caused this crap storm that I live in. The old adage is what? You make the bed you sleep in.
Right. Yeah. They haven't been having to deal with those things, and all of a sudden it comes crashing down.
Or even before, not even while they were somewhat dealing with them with pain, with the numbing of it, their sin was still causing havoc in their life in all areas.
Right.
God will not bless you when you are doing something that's sinful in your life. He will hold it back. Just yesterday, we were talking with somebody, and I'm going to get back on this first guy's story in just a second, but it's a friend in our life, very high level mindset, just solid in his beliefs, all these other things, but there's a wrinkle in his game. And he's struggling in his relationship right now. They're not married, but they've just had this turmoil. And he's newer to faith in the past few years, but he's physically fit. He's crushing it in all areas, and he's growing. And he went from like zero faith to like pretty high level really fast. And I was, as a friend, we just get vulnerable with each other. And so I was kind of like guiding him and coaching him through some things, asking questions, supporting. And then I was telling you about it later in the day. And what I loved is you're the assassin. It was like, I had like given him all the like this stuff. And then you were like,
he's doing things out of order.
You said, what?
Are they having sex?
Yeah. Premarital sex.
Premarital sex. Right. And which is doing things out of order, and God's a God of order.
Right. And we were laying in bed and I was like, you're so smart, babe. I'm like, I didn't even ask that question. And I know they are. And I would have pointed it out. And I would have said, dude, you need to stop having premarital sex because that's blocking the blessing from you having all of that in the relationship that you're having. And so you can do all the things you want, but God will not bless until you remove the things that you did put it in order.
Right. It'll still be a thorn on their side.
And so my point of saying that is guys, is that God will block the blessings. So same thing in your life when you have masturbation and porn and drinking and other things. I'm just using this for this first guy scenario as that there's going to be devastation,
right?
And there won't be blessing because of it. Now, when you remove that, it will come, but then that's the affliction part of this that we were talking about in Psalms, where now you have to sit in the pain.
Yeah.
And so this guy's sitting. And so what I told him was, I'm like, dude, you're just going to have to deal with this now. And now you've just numbed it for so many years that you have to just go ahead and sit through this. You have to work through it. And then as you will learn to what the lesson is there is why all this pain's there, you'll actually master it and you'll become healed, because we can all get the pain to stop, but all of us want to be healed.
Right.
And so that's when the things get really, really special in life, is when you sit in that pain. And we touch on that often on this podcast, but that's where I was really hammering down on him yesterday of like, bro, here you are, 3 weeks, maybe 4, honor you for removing this stuff. But now the game starts where you're like, dude, how do I do this without those things?
Oh yeah. It's like learning to walk all over again, right?
It really, really is.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things, guys, where I just want to challenge everybody listening to this podcast is you may not think that something premarital,
right,
like premarital sex is blocking you from having a phenomenal relationship. Well, no, it's not that. That's what's causing it. Really, you're telling me premarital sex is stopping me and my girlfriend from arguing all the time and us connecting. No, it's her father wound that she has, and her father never loved on her in all these areas, and that's why we argue. Yeah, that's part of it.
Right.
But God's blocking the blessing of you healing that, and
Right.
her following you, and her really trusting you, and her seeing the fruit, because your character and your discipline and your battling of your flesh is not good enough to where you can't have premarital sex.
Right.
Now let's go to marriage. Same thing, right? What is blocking that, guys, in your life? I promise you, if you're masturbating, you're blocking blessings from God blessing your marriage. I promise you, if you're masturbating, your marriage is being held back in so many ways.
Your wife is being held back in so many ways as well.
What you bring into your house, masturbation, porn, anything like that, you're inviting negativity in your house. You're inviting sin in your house. We could go deep on this and say you're inviting demons and things like that into your house,
Right.
which are very real, guys. And if you believe in Jesus, you have to believe in demons,
Right.
which you do. You invite this.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody was talking about this about Halloween the other night. I'm in a high level group of men, which still blows my mind, like that I'm doing life with certain people now. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. And I'm just thankful and I'm humbled. But they were talking about it. They were like, one thing that we've been doing in our life recently, a lot of guys were like, we no longer celebrate Halloween. And for a while there, even me and you had like thought about it, but then we were like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But then like even this year, you used to like going to haunted houses. And I said, babe, I go, do you really want to go to a haunted house? Like, are you not kind of inviting the certain things into your life? And you were like, kind of. And it was like, yeah. And you were like, yeah, I've never thought of that. And then when I told you about the other guys in the group not doing Halloween, that they said no, and that somebody told them and broke it down like this: if you're like, well, but somebody could be like, well, dude, I don't do all the gory, zombie, bloody horror stuff. We just dress up as the Flintstones. When you're in agreement with one thing, you're in agreement with all. If you're in agreement with that, with sin. And so it's the same thing with the demons. Like, your agreement with dressing up as bloody, your agreement because you're still dressing up, and it's all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the same thing for your house, right? Like, if you're bringing in porn, you're bringing all these other things into your house, and it just transfers over to your wife. Your wife might not have any idea that you watch porn or anything like that. Chances are she does. But she's getting attacked in certain ways.
Absolutely.
It's killing her self-worth.
Insecurities, yeah, all kinds of things.
100%.
Right.
And so you got to be very, very careful on the things that you're bringing in and the things that you're doing. And so I want to challenge everybody. We want to keep it simple with this one, guys. Take a look at your life. You must remove porn from your life. You must remove masturbation from your life. You must remove alcohol from your life. You must remove certain friends from your life.
Mm-hmm.
You must remove anything from your life that's not biblically aligned with Jesus. And it's hard to say that. You're like, dude, like, well, life's going to be boring. Well, let me ask you this right now. Do you wake up every morning and think to yourself, today's the best day of my life? I'm so excited for today. Man, my marriage is killing it every single day. We haven't fought in so long. You know what? I'm just at peace and joy. And if the answer is no,
which if you're doing any of those things, it's going to be no.
Right. Then you're saying, well, then I'm saying, how's that working out for you?
Right. Yeah.
So you're still going for the momentary pleasure rather than the eternal pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible says store up treasures in heaven. It doesn't say store up treasures on earth. It doesn't say it. But that's what we're doing. And so when we have these things in our life, we need to ask ourselves, yeah, but I got to enjoy. Well, do you love? It's like this for somebody who's obese. But man, you got to be able to enjoy food too. Well, do you look in the mirror and think to yourself, I'm freaking killing it. You're looking good. I'm proud of you. Hard work. I respect you, to yourself. Or do you think like, dang, bro, I got to like tighten some things up. I'm not too happy. Gosh, Lord, I'm ugly. I'm thinking. And if that's how you think, that's the consequences of saying, well, I got to enjoy food as well.
Right. Because when you feel good about yourself and you look in the mirror and you look good and makes you feel that much better about yourself, that's when you're going to be enjoying life.
Exactly.
Not because you get to eat a Snickers bar every day and then you look in the mirror and you have all this self-confidence issues and stuff because you don't like the way that you look. You don't like the way that you feel.
Yeah. I always say
Enjoying life is so different than what people think.
totally. I always say go to bed a champion, wake up a champion.
Yeah.
When you kill it every day, you get to lay your head on the bed at the end of the day and
Mm-hmm.
have no regrets.
Right.
And then you get to wake up the next day like stoked.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't and you break, then that night you lay your head on the pillow, guess what? Guess what happens? You go, oh, I should have done better today. I'll do better tomorrow. Well, then guess what? When you wake up in the morning, you think to yourself, ugh. This past week I was reading, I'm in Luke, it's chapter 22. Can't tell you the verses off the top of my head, but it was when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane. He says twice, pray so that you will not fall into temptation.
Mm-hmm.
He says that to them, to the apostles. He goes away a stone's throw away and starts praying to the Father. And during that prayer with the Father, he's with anguish. He's sweating blood, like all of this stuff. He's saying, God, your will be done. But if you can, take this away from me, but I want your will.
Mm-hmm.
Because God knows he wants his will, because he's telling him, he doesn't take it away from him. But it says an angel came and strengthened him. Guys, sometimes in your life, an angel is going to be your wife, a friend, a podcast, something like that that's going to strengthen you. Or it might actually be an angel or God that's going to strengthen you. Sometimes he just does it through other people. Number one, but you have to do his will. So it's removing those things, which is removing sin. Number two, it keeps going. This is where it gets special, guys. In the last part of the verse, it says, Jesus got done praying and he finds his apostles asleep. And he says, wake up. And it said when the apostle, before he tells them to wake up, it says they were exhausted from sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells them to wake up. And then he says, you must stay awake and pray so you do not fall into temptation. So the point of saying that is right before that, he says they were exhausted. So men, when you're exhausted from not having intimacy in your life, when you're exhausted from having a terrible marriage, when you're exhausted from hating yourself from the way you look in the mirror, when you're exhausted from being broke, when you're exhausted from working a million hours and being rich and not even be able to enjoy those, when you're just exhausted emotionally or just physically, Jesus says, no matter what, do not stop being disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you cannot stop. Wake up. He knew they were tired. He wasn't like, oh, guys, go lay down, take a nap. No, he said, pray so you don't fall into temptation, because what happens when you're exhausted? You fall into temptation.
Right. You invite the devil into your life.
You're going to fall into porn. You're
Yeah.
going to fall into overeating. You're going to fall into alcohol. You're going to fall into things to make the pain stop, because now you're exhausted and you're inviting more sin in your life. And so you want to feel better. And so you don't go do those things. But because you're doing those, now you're bringing sin to your life. You fell into temptation. But if you just stay disciplined and you don't do those things, you don't fall into temptation, and you just do it every single day. And no matter what, you'll have the fruit. And when you don't feel like you can be strengthened, as you know you're doing the Father's will, which isn't sin, he'll strengthen you.
Right.
But he will not strengthen you when you're giving in to sin. When you're tugging away on yourself and then you're like, God, I'm so emotionally weak. He's not going to be like, now I'm going to strengthen you, because earlier, you were just looking at that hot video on whatever porn site on whatever, what's the one, OnlyFans. Like you're checking you out on their OnlyFans. I'm going to strengthen you right now.
No, he needs to know that he can trust you with things in your life, and by doing those things, you're sinning, and he's not gonna reward sin.
He will pull back. Go read.
Yeah.
God, where is it? Hebrews or 2 Corinthians. Oh, I have it on my phone somewhere. But anyways, it's where it talks about like he will punish you. God will punish you because he's a good father. The same way we have to punish our children if they're throwing fits. We don't give them a lollipop.
Right.
You take away their iPad, or whatever your thing is that they enjoy, you take it away.
And that's love.
Right. And there's a whole verse on this.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Father does to you. And so, yes, he'll forgive you when you repent, but that doesn't mean as soon as you repent, the blessing's back on. Like the faucet turns back on. It's just like if you can't pay your water bill and then now they have to turn off the water to say, well, to punish you, to say, until you pay this, it's not going to come back on. Then you pay it, it comes back on. That's not how it is in the blessings with God. It can be if that's in his will. But oftentimes he's like, I want to show you that there is repercussion.
Right.
Right now, you can't be trusted because you've fallen off, you repent. You fall off, you repent. You fall off, or back and forth, back and forth. Well, he just knows that that's a cycle. You don't really mean what you're saying, because next thing you know, 3 days later, you're doing it again.
Right. Just as I was saying, he has to know that he can trust in you in that.
Yeah. And so it really is, guys, is like, it's hard when you remove those things from your life, whether that's snacking or energy drinks or drugs or alcohol or porn or masturbation or anything like that, because that is a dopamine hit and you're trying to self soothe.
Right.
But when you do, you're going to feel a lot more pain. So it almost gets worse than better. In certain ways, it'll get better, right? Because now you're not overeating and your body's going to feel better, or you're not drinking and your body's going to feel better. But then also, there's also real life things that you've been numbing that you have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But that's cool because you'll learn to deal them with yourself. You'll realize why they're there, and then you'll stop taking them out on your spouse. And then your spouse will see you changing, and that you don't need to come home at night and have 2 beers or 3 beers. And she'll see you that you're looking trimmer and that you're not just snacking all the time and doing all this stuff. It's so important, guys, to really be able to get to those other levels of what God's calling you to. So I guess the whole point of even doing this podcast right here is that sin has real life ramification, guys. It's just not that it's hurting your relationship with God. It will cause a fire in your life.
Right.
And when you remove it, just like a real fire in a house, the damage is still there.
Yeah. The damage still has to heal
And so you have to be
in
able to
your life.
repair that.
Right.
Well, if your house halfway burns down, it's going to take a while for the insurance money to come in, for you to get a contractor, for them to actually do it, for
Build
you
it
to do it
back
all
up.
up. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be misplaced and having to live out of a hotel for a while, or at a friend's house, or at your relative's house, which is uncomfortable. But that's the process of building back. It's the same thing in your marriage to build back.
Right. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to take time of rebuilding. It's going to have to go through that process.
You know, so the election was last night, and, it was obviously, we're obviously conservatives and believe that God totally played a major part in getting Trump and all of the House and the Senate back on, to because of the moral things that were happening here. But props to the people who had the conviction to go vote. But with that being said, there was something cool that was said last night on one of the talk shows. And we don't even get into the politics too much. We know about it. We know where we stand and we do our part, but we don't really watch those shows. But on election night, we did. And somebody said, the very first time, and Trump, and I don't care who you guys are, you already know, like you could be a Kamala fan or whoever is your fan. There's no denying that Trump slayed those 4 years of economic, everybody's finances got drastically improved. Our country drastically improved. Home interest rates were down in the 2%. The houses were just selling like hotcakes. Gas was cheap. Everybody was thriving financially. It was just so cool to see. There was 0 wars during that time, and that had never happened. All this, and then Biden came in, and then it was like the finances went to crap. Wars all over this world.
Everything went downhill.
Right? So what I'm just saying is you can't deny that Trump did that. Right now, as a man, whether you like him or not, that's your own opinions and things. But here's what I'm going to say. The first time he got in, it took him a little bit to figure out politics. This was the first time politician. It took him a while to figure it out, but now he's back killing it. But then he eventually killed it, right? This time they were saying, because he already knows how it all works, he's coming in day one and slaying, right? And it's going to be great. Now he's got to unwork some stuff from the last regime who caused sin in a dumpster fire in this country to be able to, he's got to undo that, but he's going to know how to do it right away. And so guys, that's the same thing for you guys, is you're going to learn through this process. You're going to get better and better and better and better. And now just in our life, that's why things are just picking up so fast, because we don't bring sin in our life anymore. I'm not saying we're not sinful people. It's minor things where we're probably like, I don't know, have a comparison things, or maybe we judge somebody or something like that, might be our things, but we don't watch porn. We don't masturbate. We don't lie. We don't do anything of that other stuff. Right.
Yeah.
We do nothing of that. And when I mean that, guys, and the reason why is because I've played the tape forward too many times. I've done the other side of that too many times, and I never want to feel that way ever again. So it's just not worth it. God is worth it. So you'll get better at this, guys, but to become the person that you're proud of, you have to remove all that crap from your life. You have to sit in the pain. You have to grow, but just understand there's real life ramifications. And the lastly is that you were numbing yourself for a lot of years. Don't switch it to something else to numb yourself.
Yes.
A lot of people do that. I spoke that to somebody today. I said, when I got done being a drug addict, I I got a high from going to the supplement store and buying supplements and buying stuff to make my physique better. And I got a high from the gym. Well, after a while, that was the thing that was numbing it.
It's like a new addiction,
It was.
Yeah.
Now a good, better one, but I still had to figure out that was my life for 12 years
Yeah.
or more. And I was better. I still hadn't really figured out what the issue was, why I was a drug addict in the first place,
Right.
why I was cheating on you in the first place.
Yeah.
All of that. I didn't know. I just turned it to a different addiction. When you can actually sit in the pain, you'll figure it out and you don't have to have any addiction. Then when you're working out, you're doing it because it's a great benefit to your life, not to numb. Then when you're having so much sex with your wife, it's not to like numb your anxiety and dopamine hit. It's just because you're connecting in the spirit. When you're making finances, it's not so you can buy a million things to try to numb your pain. It's so you can have maybe some security or bless other people or whatever other things like that. It's not to numb. That's when those things are good, but those things can be bad. If you haven't figured out the real reason of the pain and you're making a crap ton of money, you're going to do it to try to numb yourself.
Right.
There's all those things that do it. It's why people constantly have body augmentation surgeries, or they feel like 8% body fat's not low enough. They need to keep going lower. It's because they're not enough in themselves and they haven't figured out why that pain's in their life.
Yeah. So they just keep going to the next thing, trying to make them feel better.
Yeah. So anyways, guys, we love you. Truly do. If you enjoy this podcast, please follow, rate it 5 stars. It's just, we've gotten so many great messages from people that just said it's changed their life in so many ways. And guys, I don't want you to ever to think that like it's egotistical, but I'll tell you what, I love myself because I used to hate myself. And so when I speak a lot of this stuff, it's from doing all the hard work. I sat in pain after pain after pain, and I removed the sin. And it took me a long time to rebuild my credit that I had destroyed in my life. It's kind of like a real life credit. For no bank's going to trust you with the credit card until you rebuild it, remove the stuff from your life. That's you doing that with God in your marriage. You have to rebuild your credit, which takes time. So, but you're only going to do that from finding out why the pain's there, stop numbing it, and removing sin from your life. So God bless y'all.
Bye.